Part number 197. With very sharp corners. From the early 1930s. Where children learned to be careful with their toys. First aid, please. Hi, and welcome back. Growing up was strange for me. There was this shadow that I seemed to walk in, a sense of expected achievement, a level that I should be able to attend. After all, he had done it before us. He had broken the records when others said it couldn't be done. And almost you weren't allowed to talk about it. The tragedy at Pendine had cost the family dearly. And even though my grandfather never talked about it, the First World War affected him deeply, and death, our ever-present companion that walks with us daily, meant an untold silent pain, one that he couldn't describe, and only his poetry alludes to. And I think the death of his brother affected him profoundly on other levels, even though they were not close by all reports. The LSR community was close, and still is close. When you were all striving to achieve the same goal, the death of a rival also reminds you that next time it might be you. Next time the engine growls into life, it might be the last thing you hear. And while dying is part of the circle of life, I don't know if dying for something you love, the passion that makes you push harder, if that is a bad thing. The people that attended the funeral is a list of the famous, the privileged few that know what the edge of the envelope really is, and just how weak our hold on life is. Reed Railton, a close friend of my great-uncle's. John Cobb, who some few years later would meet his end on the waters of Loch Ness. And Captain and Mrs. Malcolm Campbell. Few names can bring greater respect than those listed. They are the names of legend. Their feats to break free of the humdrum of normal life and reach for goals that were thought to be only fictional. They were heroes. Malcolm Campbell, the name summons up romance born of the time. The advances that technology were making seem to us humdrum now. But the 1920s and 30s were a time of pushing back barriers. On land, sea, and in the air, we were going further and faster. Malcolm Campbell was born in 1885 in Chislehurst, Kent, the son of a Hatton Garden diamond seller. After attending Uppingham School in Rutland, he was sent to Germany to learn the trade as a diamond seller, following in his father's footsteps. It was here that he first gained an interest in motorbikes and racing. I wonder what that first moment was. At the turn of the 20th century, living in a foreign country, when he opened the throttle up, feeling the adrenaline rush, as the bike leapt forward, responsive to his commands. Returning to Britain, he found work with Lloyd's of London, albeit unpaid for 2 years, and then a further year at £1 a week. Between 1906 and 1908, he competed in the London to Land's End Trials, a race for motorcycles, winning all 3 events. By 1910, he is taken to the track at Brooklands, racing in the first of all his cars, called Bluebird. But then the outbreak of hostilities of the First World War meant a stop for all races. He enlisted as a motorbike dispatch rider at first, and fought at the Battle of Mons in 1914. He was commissioned in September of 1914 and then drafted into the Royal Flying Corps, where he served as a ferry pilot. The Second World War found him in charge of a provost company of the 56th London Division. where he commanded the military police section of the Coates Mission until 1942. The Coates Mission was a special British Army unit established for the sole purpose of evacuating the King and Queen along with their family should the Germans have invaded. Upon taking the position, he recommended that the unit be equipped with the fast Norton International Model 30 instead of the slower military Norton WD 16H. Unlike so many of his rivals of his era, Sir Malcolm Campbell died of natural causes, as so many died in fatal crashes, in 1948 at the age of 63. The land speed record cars of the 1920s and 30s had colours, almost like the heraldry of knights in armour of a bygone era. My great-uncle's colours of light blue and white, Henry Seagrave's golden-coloured cars, and Sir Campbell's dark blue. His first three cars were named Flapper 1 to 3, a rather risque name for the period, as a flapper was a name given to a subculture of women in the 1920s who wore short dresses, what was considered too much makeup, and drank, throwing away tradition and paving the way for modern Western female culture. After watching a play by the name of Bluebird, he decided to paint his car dark blue, famously waking up a store owner in the early hours and buying his stock of dark blue paint, painting his car and racing the next day at Brooklands. His first land speed record car was a fourth Bluebird, a Sunbeam 350 horsepower aero-engined powered car. The power plant for the car was the Sunbeam Manitou, which had failed as an aircraft engine but was successfully fitted to the car. It was an 18.3 litre V12. Taking the title in September in 1924 at 146 miles per hour. And again in 1925, making both the land speed record and the title for being the first person to travel at over 150 miles per hour, taking the LSR at 150.87 miles per hour. Both times racing at Pendine Beach, South Wales. In 1926, saw the title go to Harry Seagrave in March, driving Ladybird at 152.33 miles per hour, racing at Ainsdale Beach, Southport. Then my great uncle, in April of that year, twice at Pendine in Babs, for 168.74 and 171.69 miles per hour. In February of 1927, Malcolm Campbell had the first of his Napier Campbell cars designed and built, with a view of claiming the 200 miles per hour title. The car was a 22.3 litre W12 block, generating 512 horsepower. He set the land speed record at 174 miles per hour in February of that year, with the intention of trying again for the coveted 200 miles per hour title, only to have Henry Seagrave take it a month later, driving Mystery at Daytona Beach in the USA. He tried again a year later, in 1928, beating Henry Seagrave's title by 3 miles per hour. For a while, the title passed back and forth between Campbell, Seagrave, and the American contestant Ray Keesh, until in 1931, Campbell returns to America with his new and last car, the Campbell Napier Railton Bluebird, a 23.9 litre supercharged W12 block, generating 1,450 horsepower, retaking the title of Henry Seagrave at 246 miles per hour in February of that year, and earning himself a knighthood in the process. Again in 1932, passing the 250 mile per hour title at 253.97 miles per hour. In February of 1933, he returned to Daytona, beating his last title at 272.46 miles per hour. March of 1935 saw him again increase the lead at 276.81 miles per hour. And then in September of 1935, racing at Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, he takes the record at 301.12 miles per hour and also claims his third milestone title, the first 300 mile per hour pass. This was also the first time Bonneville had a record set. The salt flats would be used for a number of years to come. It was also the last time Sir Malcolm Campbell raced on land, hunting the elusive land speed record, even though in 1939 he took to the water speed record on Coniston Water at 141.88 miles per hour. It would be another 30 years until Campbell would stand holding the land speed record. The things that make us great are mundane. The parenting from my father and mother. The support that we as a family give now to our mother in her final years. Our armed forces, emergency services, medical staff and teachers. The list is long. These are the things that make us great as people. These moments that seem to be trivial and unimportant. The points in history that others don't see. The random acts of kindness that can still now reach out decades after the event happened. Out of this mundaneness of life shine the bright stars, all too often burning out in a moment of reaching for greatness that is just beyond their grasp. That they are worthy of praise, of the status of hero, is without a doubt. But then, so is the police officer who steps into danger to save another. The teacher who is patient with a child who cannot grasp what is being taught. The doctor who fights to save the life of a drunk driver. There was a quote from Jessie Coombs just before her fatal crash in 2019. It may seem a little crazy to walk directly into the line of fire. And yes, I think it is crazy. But is it better to walk into the line of fire than to spend the rest of your life regretting the things you did not do because you were too afraid of what others might think? My great uncle said he would not put his faith in a false idol. I say that I will not live my life as a false lie, trying to seek the attainment that others set as a normality, a normality that I feel unhappy and unfulfilled with. Maybe I should say something about this build. I think it's meant to be the Campbell Napier Relton car. After all, it's from the 1937 manual. And it was a very simple build and great fun. And yes, engine sounds were made when I was testing it.